Here we go.
And I have to hit got it.
Everyone. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nancy Schwartz, and I am founder and transformational strategist of Envision Healthy Retirement. I'm so excited to welcome you to another fantastic episode of The Art of Healthy Retirement. Today, we have Lynn Lambrecht. We pronounced the T at the end, I'm told, so I hope I did it justice. And what I find so amazing about Lynn is that she has really converted her career into a passion where she's serving others. And I can't wait to dive in the story and share it with you. Lynn and I also, oddly, even though we were on opposite coasts, have crossed a bit in terms of what we did in 9/11. So it's it's like meeting a sister from the West Coast. There you go. So let's get into why we're doing this podcast. And our goal here is obviously twofold: to support business experts who are transforming into healthy retirement, or business experts who have retired. And our format is 30 minutes. It's posted on my channel on YouTube, Nancy Schwartz. And the interview really focuses on how our guests are living or will be living in their ideal retirement with health. And that is a key driver for success. And no interview is the same. And that's the joy of the discussion. We are disrupting the way you think about traditional retirement in real time. And each podcast is educational. And certainly you'll feel this with Lynn. It's amazing what she's doing in content. And we offer inspiration to others by showcasing the guests living life on their own terms. So welcome, Lynn, to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Nancy. And you're right. We are sisters, bi-coastal sisters, even though, distance separates, but experiences don't.
Yes, exactly. So Lynn, I would love for you to share with my audience, but also your audience, your career, because it spanned, global multinationals to more, if you will, advisory council work, to now where you are. So how did you get into the airline/travel business? Well, I'd love to hear that. And then how did you make that step out? What were those steps and your driving thoughts to create what you do today?
It's interesting. Aviation, I think I remember the first time I was on an airplane. I was 4 years old, and my dad had been a World War II B-17 tail gunner. And he loved flying, but he was 5'8", and at those days that was still too short to be, in the pilot's seat. So he was a tail gunner, and he wanted to make sure that all of us as kids felt comfortable on an airplane. And it's one of those things that he felt comfortable on an airplane, and so therefore we, like I remember being in the seats, and it's when the old days of the Convaires where you faced back instead of always facing forward. So I think I had a travel bug from a very young age. When I was really little, though, it was through books. I traveled through books. Wintertime was a perfect time to read. I grew up in the Midwest, and you have your snowstorms, and you kind of curl up, and everybody's in their bear hibernation mode, and you do things to entertain yourself. And I definitely entertained myself through reading. When I went to college and graduate school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Everyone in my family was in the sciences, medical, dental, nutrition, et cetera, and then came me. And when I finished graduate school, I had been an RA in undergrad and a head res in grad school, and I'd had a lot of crisis intervention training. And I had moved out to the West Coast I went to college in Florida, grad school in Ohio, moved to the West Coast, and I got a job with Northwest Orient Airlines. That was my first job. I was their first woman sales rep in their San Francisco office. And I was calling on corporations and government and military installations and travel agencies and tour operators and the Hawaii wholesalers. And it was through that really the seed was ultimately planted for doing what I do now, because they asked me if I would consider becoming an emergency team responder. And I'm a live wire, and I'm a non-caffeinated live wire. And
Lucky you.
well, in those days I wasn't. Today I am. But it's really interesting because I'm really calm in a bad situation. And yet when you're 22 and right out of grad school, you don't really think that that's going to happen anytime soon, because that was still pretty unusual when something happened. And I was called into action twice in my 20s. The first crash, everyone had died, and the second crash, everyone had lived. And I learned something very different from each of those experiences. And I think the real gist of what I learned is how unprepared we are when something happens. And we don't, as a society, really tend to talk about it. It's something that, you just kind of, no, no, no. You leave it at bay, because we want to live life, and we want to live life vibrantly and with vibrant health. Let's always kind of remember that part too. So, it's that was my first awakening, and talking to my parents and asking them if they, Dad, have you really talked to Mom about this and this and this and this? I mean, became the kind of pain in the butt in my family. And I was also the one that realized that it wasn't just at the end of life when you are older that some of the legal documents were required. It was if you were younger and you weren't fully capable, that you could have someone step in for you. And so I did all of my initial legal documents in my 20s. So I've been doing it subsequently, in the next 4 decades, to keep updating things. And that was just very normal for me. But my job was great, because my day job, and I was able to move around a lot, and do different things. Opened up our office in Sacramento, headed up our international sales in LA, moved to Cleveland to oversee Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, moved to Seattle to oversee Alaska, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Northern California, and then had the opportunity to change countries and companies. So I was moved to China with United Airlines, and I was first their sales rep for both passenger and cargo sales, and then stepped into the country manager role, and moved down to Hong Kong to work in our Pacific South divisional office. And that's when both of my parents had health issues. My mom's heart, and my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I moved back to the States so that I could be closer to my parents. The Chicago was United's headquarters, and I grew up across the state. And so I was helping my mom learn all the things that my dad really was not going to remember how to do very much longer, and be there in support of my dad. And that's when I was called into service to work 9/11. So that was my third of 3 airplane crash that I worked. And I think that all of those experiences helped me learn how precious life is, and what a beautiful gift it is to be here. I think with my family experience, though, I have always listened to my body when it came to health. I'm in my mid-60s, and I don't take medicine. And my mind, my body, the spirit, all of it kind of works together, I think, to help us maintain health. Yet, as the reformed workaholic, I will tell you, I didn't always make time for those exercises and to do all the things on a regular basis. But after my dad had died, I moved up to Montreal to work with the International Air Transport Association. And that's when I left my car in Southern California and sold it to a friend's daughter who needed a car. And I thought, I'm going to walk to and from work. Well, I walked 1.5 miles each way, and it was when it was 39 below or 70 degrees. And that was my time every morning and every evening to pump up and to wind down. And that's kind of when I started reinvigorating, like that side of a healthy habit. And in year 4, just like when I was in Asia, my mom started failing. And so I didn't renew my contract, and I came back to the States, and I had no job. And so it was too early for me to officially retire. And it was, time to, in many ways, to do the same kind of caregiving we had done with, dad,
Mhm.
with my mom. And that's when I gave myself that big opportunity, I called it. Lynn, who are you? What are all the things that you have done? What do you love to do business wise? What makes your heart flutter?
Mhm.
Where are the things that you could maybe be of service and do something that utilizes all of me? So I call it the patchwork quilt of my experiences. And I started kind of patchworking them together and saying, okay, there's some commonality with some skills and some talent, but there's also a driving force. And that driving force for me was truly identifying what my purpose was. And that was to educate others as to the real benefit in a proactive way to take, to understand that there's a finite date to the end of life, and to say, you know what, it's okay to really kind of have some preparation and
Mhm.
to have some people on your team that can help you when you need it. Because guess what? None of us lives alone. I mean, and I live alone. I'm not, but none of us lives in an isolated burb. So I created the Living Planner as a combination of everything that I have done to be a proactive cheerleader for people, to understand that personal and business readiness is something that we can do now while we are living, and to kind of have some fun with it, to uh, actually live your life better every day. So
Yeah.
now I get to wake up in the morning and meditate. And, that is a life by design. I mean, I want to
Mhm.
get grounded. I
Mhm.
want to make sure that I eat well. I want to make sure that I move my body. I want to make sure that my spirit is happy.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's
this.
kind of me in a nutshell. It's like that whole combination of all my craziness of saying, okay, hold on. What can I do with that to maybe help one person?
Yeah. No, I love this, and I'm such a believer in preparedness. And also, I think we're living in a lifetime now where there's really a lot of unusual unknowns in our future, right? So this sense of having security in a living planner or something, a vehicle similar to that, and to start the discussion, start the communication, right? And
It's
you said
key.
that, people are just like allergic to it. And I get it in my world. And I understand that, but from your point of view, working with corporations and working with individuals, why, when you show up, do they start running away? And how do you bring them back to the table and say, hey, um, this is something of tremendous value to you, the organization, and or
Yeah.
the individual.
In all transparency, the organizational side of my work is smaller.
Mhm.
I will, smaller businesses have been more of my focus, or even
Mhm.
solopreneurs. But I'll
But
tell you what,
equally important, because if a
well,
solopreneur goes away, we got problems. So
yeah,
yeah,
well, who could step in?
right.
I love to put things in layperson terms.
Hmm.
So even when I was moving around like a little like a little, person that said a Rolling Stone was gathering no moss in my career, I had backup for backup of every one of my team members. I wrote step-in plans for every office. Those, I can tell that truly working those crash sites taught me
Mm.
something that I wanted to use of something of value. I didn't want to have it be my fear point. I
Hmm.
wanted
Hmm.
it to be my strength point.
Right.
Um, and I know that the allergies, I think, come to the fact that people don't always talk about mortality or what quality of life means to them,
Right.
or what, I mean, if something happened and your quality of life was impaired, or it isn't what it is today, would you want to give up? Or
Mhm.
what would you do to make your life still sustainable
Mm.
and actually something that you're looking forward to waking up in the morning? So I go deep, I know, and people are pretty interesting, because they would tend to be much more drawn to doing something when they've had an external trigger.
Yeah.
And that could be someone in their family, a dear friend, a colleague in the office, etc. But I will, and that tends to be the time when people all of a sudden realize, oh gosh, it's now
Right.
about me.
Yeah.
I find that even within I mean, I grew up with the ostriches. I mean, that was not, we didn't talk about this stuff at home.
Hmm.
And yet most of my family was dealing with life and death stuff.
Hmm.
So I found that always very incongruently interesting.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm the one that kind of just says, okay, this is what it is. So how about we have the conversation? And I know that people get warm and then they get cold and then they get warm. It's all about your time. I
Yeah.
mean, you can lead the horses to water, but I mean, I'm not going to make anybody drink, because at the end of the day, we all have to have a willingness to do what we do. Otherwise, it's just kind of perfunctory.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times I found, even with my parents, my dad did the priests and nuns for free. He was not really a business guy. I mean, he was a dentist that he also had like that service heart. And I remember him saying to me before I left for China, I said, let's just go update documents, please. I don't care that I'm other as born in legal. I don't care, but I care about state and national laws. And he said, Lenny, I don't pay attention to all that. And I'm not sure what to ask. And I don't want to look like I'm not protective of you guys and that I'm not, knowledgeable. And I said, well, then good, let me be your layperson interpreter, because each professional has their lingo.
Right.
And that was the side of business that I loved, because I would, take it to task and say, hey, what about, how does that impact me? Just like I would ask my team, to always ask others, what's in it for them? So what's in it for you? And for me, it was like a knowledge base of understanding what my parents wanted,
Hmm.
how they wanted it, how I could make comfort for them as times were changing,
Yeah.
maintain dignity and respect.
Mhm.
Because if
Honoring
you,
them. Yeah.
well, if you feel like you're losing control of everything.
Yeah.
And that's the piece where it's honestly, it's not losing control. You have granted control to others to help them understand you well enough so that they can honor your wishes.
Right.
So
Right.
for me, the conversation is natural, and I'm not really sure why, but it just is. And
Yeah.
it's something where I just listen. And and I ask some questions of, hey, could this be done if you weren't here? Or could this be done if you weren't here? And just want to make it interactive. And how do we make life easier?
Yeah. I think that the simplicity of your thinking is really beautiful. And I know that when I've worked with individuals, my family or clients, and we're talking about specific legal instruments right now, but it goes across all things to communicate to those nearest you, be it team members, be it your family, what are your wishes? Because oftentimes people may or may not have the documents executed, but then people are in the fog like, do we take them off life support or do we
Yeah.
not? What's the direction? So I always come at it from the point of view, and we had this discussion before, I always come at it from the point of view of, hey, this is at that moment, this is not about you. This
No.
is helping others
Yeah.
to help you so that they're very clear on what your directives are so that they feel comfortable. And I can't tell you how many times I have talked with people who are really at raw, internal and very raw. Like, I honestly don't know. We're trying to decide, do we point to the right or the left or up or down? We're confused. We don't know. There's no clue here. So I just put that out there. I don't mean to be rough and gruff, but I think that is when you can have an understanding, be it in your teams or be it in your own family or friends who may be helping you.
Yeah.
That's just it makes everyone at ease. So that God forbid something does happen, people will be like, okay, I got this. I understand the process now.
It's like going to the gym. We
Yeah.
cannot be buff and the first day we go back.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
after a long time, it's building the muscle. And I call it leaving the trail of breadcrumbs.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, who could walk into my place and have a general understanding of A, do they have keys to get in here? But,
right.
B, what are the passwords and codes to get into things? And then C, what do they need to actually do to help? I mean, I could be living and just not fully functioning in that moment. And they would, what can they do to sustain things for me? But, I'm also the crazy one that when my parents were in their 70s, I said, please describe to me quality of life.
Mm,
What are the things you'd like to see? What are the things that you'd like to hear? What are the things you'd like to smell, taste, feel? Because I felt like the five senses are something that can be with us no matter what.
mm.
So I knew when my dad's Alzheimer's, when he didn't know who I was,
Oh,
you know what? I knew that he wanted to be outside on the deck,
mm.
watching the birds, feel the sunshine or the breeze. He listened to Nat King Cole. I knew the favorite foods. I mean, the same with my mom. And so that is a way for me to make sure that their life is still a continuation of the things that they love. But
Mhm.
I'm a big sap, and I will admit I'm a big sap. But there is in the reaction that we're having in the amidst a crisis is stress. And so if we have a go-to, just like if we have a little muscle that we've actually worked on building up, we know our go-to, and that can help us help them.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And I think that um I think this is really a disruptor in our generation, right? Because as you said, in your parents' generation and around the table when you were growing up, I mean, similar in my world.
Yeah.
We did not talk about this at all. But I can remember sitting at the table with my parents and with many other people where I've been power of attorney, where I'm the one having to drive the questions, and they'll be like, not now. And I'm like, it is now, right? So having that honesty, that honest conversation, and again, and in the businesses, I mean, look what's happening to the weather just around the country.
Oh, well, the natural disasters are nuts. And I
Right.
will tell you what's interesting to me is I remember the first time I did this with one of my teams.
Hmm.
They all thought that they were going to have to re-interview for a job, and that I was going to, that they were going to get fired. And I said, no, no, no. This is to help us in
Right.
case.
Right.
And then what ultimately happened is a person on our team had cancer and was out. And
Oh,
and they said, oh my God, this is why.
right.
Because yes, we could step in. And so that was when I started calling them step in plans.
Hmm.
Also, I mean, so I've literally
I
kind of
love
been
that.
doing this my entire career.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because I think, especially, we think somebody's going to replace us. No, so we're here for you. Do you want to take a vacation? Would you like to have a sabbatical? Well, tell me, how's life going? Because at the end of the day, if we have somebody else that can be our second set of eyes, hallelujah. Take a break. I mean, we're human beings. We're not human doings. And let's have life that is actually in harmony with what we want.
Yeah, I love that. And also to be able to find people within your network that perhaps see things, if you and I were having this conversation, you may say to me, well, Nance, how about two steps to the right? Did you see that? And I'd be like, no,
Well,
you know,
blind
so
spots,
it's
we
so
all have
important.
them.
Right.
Blind
Yeah.
spots. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Total
just it.
blind spot.
And
Right.
we have an aversion to risk at times. And it just like we have an aversion to change at times. And so I think the whole thing is, for me, it's that the just in case is actual mitigation of
Hmm.
risk.
Yeah.
It's allowing for the smooth passages. But I know that I've had, a long lifetime to come to that. And
Hmm.
other people, it's a newer concept. And it's like, oh God, am I going to bring it upon myself? Because there's some superstitions out there too. So,
Yes.
I mean, the superstitions, okay. But honestly, if I were that powerful, I don't think I would have you go into a bad place.
Right. Right. No, exactly. Well, I can't stand it, but we're almost out of time. I can't believe this, but there
Yes,
you
ma'am.
go. Tell us where our audience can find you today online. Tell us where we may contact you, all that good stuff.
I have a website. Yes, it's thelivingplanner.com. I can be reached by email at Lynn, Lynn, at thelivingplanner.com. I am on LinkedIn with Lynn Lambrecht. There are other Lynn Lambrechts in the world, I will tell you, but you'll see my face. I am on Instagram and I have a Facebook business page with the Living Planner. And it's something where my work phone and text is 951-400-5966. And feel free to reach out. I mean, honestly, a conversation is a conversation, and I have free discovery calls all the time because it may or may not be the right time for you or the right thing for you. But if you want to just talk it through, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful offer. I hope everybody takes this generous offer up. I think it's so important for people to think forward, right? To think forward. And so I love that. So Lynn, parting words for the individual and or that company that may be speaking to you, what could be the thinking for the first step?
First step is to take a big fat deep breath and know that there are a gazillion little steps, and no one teaches us the administrative side of life. So go easy on you. Honestly, I'm the small chunk kind of person because then we can build momentum. But for the companies, I have a different saying. I didn't have EAP services available to me when I started my career, and I didn't have it after my first crash. And I will tell you, this is the proactive version of that, because it's like saying, hey, what is life? And what are the things that you need to know? Because this is an adulting side that we're not often taught. So there are all this financial information, insurance information, and everything else when it comes to companies. And half the time, people don't even understand what their benefits are.
Right.
So let's think about that. But then let's kind of realize that if somebody's out because of an illness of a loved one or something, I mean, we have a way that we can actually care for people and care for business by giving them information up front, just so that there's a better awareness and acknowledgement of what's going on.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lynn, for gracing our stages today. And you've provided so much value and impact for those that will work with you down the road, to be sure.
And if not, just don't be scared. That's my thing. Live life fully every day. That's the beauty.
All right, that's the beauty. So with that, everyone, thank you so much for listening today, and we will be in touch with our next guest down the road. But Lynn, again, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wonderful wisdom. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.